Chad has closed its eastern border with Sudan following violence linked to its neighbours' civil war. Fighting between Sudan's army and the paramilitary rapid support forces in the border town of Altina has killed 5 Chadian soldiers over the weekend. The government says the move is necessary to protect its citizens and prevent the conflict from spreading. Chad says the border will remain closed until further notice. Sudan's army says the rapid support forces have conducted drone strikes targeting civilian areas in the city of El Obeid in North Kordofan state. The army says most of the attacks were repelled and that no one was killed. Now, Kholood Khair is the founding director of Confluence Advisory. It's a think tank which focuses on Sudan. She's joining us now live from London. Thank you very much indeed. We've been talking over the last few months about the fact that people have been making their way from Sudan into Chad in order to try to escape the violence that's going on inside Sudan. What does the border closure mean for not only those people trying to escape the fighting, but also the aid that was getting into Sudan?
Yes, well, unfortunately, very little aid was actually getting into Sudan. And now with this border closure, even less will be getting in at a time where the famine rates in Sudan have skyrocketed. But what the Chadians are hoping is that somehow they'll be able to curtail the fighting and the violence in Sudan that is spilling over its borders and has been spilling over its borders for the past 3 years. I don't think this border closure will necessarily do that. What it will do, however, is make it much more difficult for those fleeing violence in Sudan to make it to relative safety in eastern Chad.
I mentioned before, though, that there was fighting between Sudan's army and the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, in Altina, in which 5 Chadian soldiers were killed. What is the risk, do you think, that the fighting, as you referred to earlier on, is going to spill over and neighbouring countries and the forces of neighbouring countries are going to start getting drawn into this conflict?
Unfortunately, I think it's too late. I think Sudan's war, which was already very much liable to spill over from the outset, has now well and truly infected neighboring countries from, border regions in Ethiopia, South Sudan, the Central African Republic, and of course, Chad. And what we're seeing today, I think, is that the Chadians are effectively recognizing just how serious this is for them right now. Tina is a very strategic town, and especially in the dry season. In the wet season, it's slightly less sort of passable. But what the RSF have tried to do, and in the past few days they've said that they have taken over Atina, is to make sure that there is very little that the Sudanese armed forces or the allied armed groups loyal to them will be able to do during the wet season in terms of putting up an obstacles to the RSF takeover. We haven't yet got confirmation that the RSF has indeed taken over Tina, but clearly now in the midst of the dry season, it's really all to fight for these groups.
We are talking about a significantly long border. Is it possible to actually keep it as secure as Chad would like? And are there diplomatic efforts that can be made to try to prevent any sort of cross-border incursions?
Well, the Chadians have said that they are, very quietly have said that they are deploying troops to that eastern region. But as you've said, it's an incredibly long border stretching all the way from Libya in the north all the way south to the Central African Republic. And it's going to be almost impossible for the Chadian forces to be able to patrol that border. We will see, unfortunately, weapons come through. We will see, hopefully, some aid come through, and we'll probably see people still try to make it through that border. What the Chadians are hoping to show is at least a symbolic gesture to show that they are not happy with the prospect of even greater spillover of Sudan's war into their territory. Diplomats have been trying to stave off the prospect of ever-increasing spillover into Sudan's neighboring countries, predominantly by pursuing first a humanitarian truce and then political talks and a ceasefire. Those processes haven't really materialized, unfortunately, to a full extent. And I think neighboring countries are getting anxious about how much Sudan's war has been allowed in many ways by the international community to continue, really impacting regional countries and neighboring countries.
Kholood Khair of Confluence Advisory, we're grateful to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.